Doing good. It's a wonderful day to end this.
Yes, beautiful.
Yeah. I think I'll do another state. Maybe a small one.
Oh, you won't send you anything?
It's a great day for a walk. Good ending. Hi, Rich. Doing good. It's a wonderful day to end this.
Yes, beautiful.
Yeah. I think I'll do another state. Maybe a small one.
Oh, you won't send you anything?
Kathleen Pettijohn of the St. Joe Valley Greens is entertained by a passerby. Kathleen is a star signature gatherer for the ballot access petition drive. One of the South Bend Tribune's political reporters interviews Jim and later Bill Stant.
Richmond, Carroll, 100,000 members in California, 40,000 in New York, 10,000 up through New England.
Some Green Party supporters stop to wish everyone well, enjoy the beautiful weather, and laugh together. Reporters from a commercial television station and public radio interviewed Bill Stant, Green candidate for Secretary of State.
And he's taking advantage of this election year to use tax dollars to send a letter to all the registered voters in the state who haven't cast a vote in the last few elections to find out if they're still there. Well, what that means is he's sending letters to households throughout the state with his name on it right before an election. This is an abuse of public trust. We need a Secretary of State that is nonpartisan.
The tenets of the Green Party, what exactly are you campaigning on? What's the...
Well, the ones that's most important to me are for this campaign.
He wants to do a smaller state this time, he said.
Yeah, right.
Rhode Island?
Yeah,
No,
maybe.
Maryland.
Maryland. I have
Nebraska.
I have one of those foot
From
massage
side to
bands.
How did the idea come to you to start this walk?
I noticed something in the paper about somebody walking either the state or the country, and I realized that such a thing still had publicity value to it. And I thought if I could go out and walk the state of Indiana and get publicity for the Green Party, then it was worth my time. I had nothing to lose. And the fact that it still has some publicity value might do some good for the cause of the Green Party getting ballot access this year. It was a very slow evolving thing. I thought, should I do this? Do I want to do this? Can I get away with doing this? Am I too old to do this? I had walked the Appalachian Trail in '95, and I knew I could walk long distances, but that was 10 years ago. And I thought I could walk flatlands of Indiana without mountains, but still, could I commit to the time? And would it really do any good for the Green Party? I didn't think it hurt the Green Party, but I knew if I got out there and tried it that I had nothing to lose and everything to gain.
Now, you have a family, right?
I have a wife and a grandchild.
What was their reaction?
My wife's reaction was first kind of laid back, and then she said, if you think you can do it, go for it. She's a Green Party enthusiast, so she backed me all the way on this, as long as we could maintain things at home, and she could pick up the slack while I was gone.
And how long were you gone?
I was gone 3 weeks altogether. That wasn't all spent walking. I spent some days off the trail as the weather got bad, and I'm glad I had that slack in my schedule because it allowed me to finish on the date that I advertised, which was today, June 20th in South Bend. I'm sorry, May 20th in South Bend. There were times when I very much needed a place to get in where it was warm and dry. I actually hit temperatures down in the lower part of the state that were 38 degrees during the daytime with blowing wind and rain. Now that leads to hypothermic conditions if you're not careful, and I knew that from walking the Appalachian Trail that I had to be careful with that. And I got into a couple motels, one at Greencastle and one before that, and then a friend of the family picked me up near Lafayette and took me to her house and let me stay overnight and wash my clothes and fed me a meal and let me sleep in a good bed. This trip couldn't have been better as far as conditions went, as far as circumstances working out in my favor.
When you slept outside, what were your accommodations there? Did you carry a tent with you or something?
I didn't have a tent. I have actually, being a minimalist hiker, I've taken to carrying a piece of nylon which weighs 16 ounces, I believe, and it's impregnated with silicone, and it's 5 by 8 feet. Now you tie, it has grommets on two ends, both ends, and 4 grommets on each side. If you take a piece of nylon rope and tie it to each end and between 2 trees 10 feet apart, and then peg down each end, then you have a very good shelter at night, as long as you face away from the prevailing wind and it doesn't blow in on you. I had enough time each night to cut pegs and put in the side grommets, because I had all that time on my hands, and I just throw them away and cut new ones the next night.
So you weren't really, that way it lightened your load.
It lightened my load very much, yeah. That's why I call myself a minimalist hiker, and that's why I could do this trip without having to carry a lot of things with me. And also, I didn't have to carry a lot of food, because almost every day I'd come across a Quick Mart or a store or a restaurant someplace, or a McDonald's. I'm not in favor of McDonald's, but a lot of times it's a quick breakfast.
Yeah, when you're hungry.
When you're hungry, McDonald's will do.
Did you sleep on the ground, or did you have a tarp or something you could lay on?
I had a ground cloth, was all. I didn't have any kind of a mat or any kind of a foam. Closed cell foam is what hikers use, and I didn't carry that because of the bulkiness of it and so on. I'm satisfied to sleep on hard ground. It's not easy on an arthritic back, but I survived. The best thing you can do if you're going to do an extensive walking is pay a lot of attention to your footwear. If your feet don't move, the rest of you isn't going anywhere either. So make sure you know what you're doing with your foot gear, and to go to somebody who knows how to fit you with good shoes or good boots, depending on where you're going to be doing your walking.
So you wouldn't go to the local department store and select a pair of shoes yourself?
Definitely not. The best outfitter I know anywhere close is in Holland, Michigan. Now that's a long distance to go, but it's very much worth it if you're going to do anything, like I said, extensive in the walking field. And that's where I went actually and got my boots fitted to me when I walked the Appalachian Trail in '95. They know how to do it, and they advised not to actually buy them there, but to try different places and buy the brand of boot that would fit your foot best.
And so they told you how to shop, basically.
Exactly, and that was the best information I ever got as far as walking and hiking goes.
How long was this particular hike? Now you went from pretty close to the Ohio River in southern Indiana north to pretty close to the Michigan border,
yeah.
South Bend, Indiana. Approximately how many miles?
It was intended to be a state hike, but in actuality, it turned out to be a little less than that, just because of circumstances. I started about, say, 28 to 30 miles from the Ohio River at the Lincoln Boyhood National Memorial along Highway 231, and I hiked to South Bend, which is like, 10, 12 miles from the state line. Those were both symbolic starting and finishing places. I wanted to start where Lincoln wrote about government of the people, by the people, and for the people, and I thought that was a very green concept. And I wanted to finish at the County City Building in South Bend, which is close to my home in LaPorte, as a symbolic gesture to hand in the petitions that I had signed. I actually didn't get that many petitions signed, or that many sheets signed, but that was not the purpose of my trip. I wanted to raise awareness of the Green Party and its ballot access requirements and its fight to gain ballot access. And I got a lot of that from people I saw along the highways who beeped their horns and waved at me, and I was gratified by that. It encouraged me too.
What is it about the Green Party that would inspire you or lead you to try something like this?
Oh, 4 years ago, when I grew tired of voting for the lesser of two evils, I just could not bring myself to do that again, and I looked around for a better alternative, and I read Michael Moore's book about stupid white people, I think it was, and in there he mentioned Ralph Nader's book that he wrote about the 2000 campaign when he ran as presidential candidate for the Green Party, and that told me that there was an alternative, and I got involved with the Green Party, and at that point it was like do or die for me. It was either, it was all or nothing for the Green Party for me.
Is that your personality? I mean, when you do something, you commit to it and you really focus on it?
I think so. I tend to jump into things with both feet and try to see it through until I reach a place where I can no longer see any advantage to it. The Green Party is my commitment for a long time to come. I have a granddaughter now, and I like to see a better possible world for her, and that's my legacy.
I noticed the cats are starting to get curious about us. But not that curious.
Yeah, not sure.
You mentioned the Appalachian Trail, and that you're a writer. And I know you wrote a book about that.
Yeah.
About that experience. What's your writing history?
I started out as a commercial artist. I went to the American Academy of Art in Chicago and worked as a commercial artist for a lot of years. And then I always knew one day I'd like to write or try writing. And the opportunity came, and behold, I sold my first article to a magazine, so I was off and running from that point on. And as I worked as an artist, then I slowly sold things and worked my way into the writing field. Actually became a feature writer for a newspaper and eventually the editor of that paper for a short while. It was when I left that paper that I went to walk the Appalachian Trail. I wrote a book on treasure hunting one time, Treasure Hunter's Guide to Metal Detecting, and then I wrote the book, The Wild Bird Song, about a memoir of the Appalachian Trail. And all my writing has been purely self-taught, I guess you'd say, learning from experience. I love Thomas Wolfe. I've been down to his home in Asheville, North Carolina. I admire his writing. John O'Hara, who is a very old-fashioned typewriter, but has a style that's unique and something I admire. I just love really going to the library and picking up a book that no one's ever heard of and finding a great writer within those works. Well, there's so many good writers out there, and so many of them are unknown. I don't particularly subscribe to popular fiction these days. To find a book that's on the bestseller list is not my idea of good reading for the most part. A lot of times it's consumerism. It's for the popular view, not an intriguingly good story written by someone who doesn't really care who he's trying to please, but just trying to depict a good story, trying to write a good story.
Did you read on your walk? Did you have time to read?
No, I didn't. You know, there's something about walking like that. It takes up so much of your mind that by the time you're done walking, you want to rest your mind. I'll tell you a funny thing, walking that far, strange things happen to your brain. Inevitably, you'll start hearing some song running through your mind, some song that you don't really care that much about, but it'll just drive you nuts for 2 or 3 days on end, and you can't get it out of there. You start reciting poems to yourself or start making up songs on your own to get that song out of your brain. It happened on the Appalachian Trail, and it happened on this walk, and it's just never going to stop, I guess. But I'll tell you one thing about walking a long trip like the Appalachian Trail, everyone sort of revises their own lives, or at least relives their lives, and tries to figure out where it's going. You have so much time for introspection. It's just amazing. and almost everybody I met on the Appalachian Trail was in a kind of a crossroads at their lives. It was either people just out of high school, people just out of college trying to decide where to go, people who just retired and trying to figure out what to do with the rest of their lives. But they would have all that time for introspection, and hardly anyone, actually no one I ever talked to said that it was a bad thing for them. Catharsis is a very good thing to have for yourself, and the time to have alone, to examine your own motivations, your past life, what you want to do with your future life, and all that is just, it was an amazing thing. It's a very, very cathartic thing, and very memorable for everyone who's ever walked the Appalachian Trail.
Yeah, I just had the thought that it must be something like a pilgrimage.
It is exactly a pilgrimage, yeah. Some people, younger people, consider it a rite of passage in a way. That's not quite right for our age group or most people. But yeah, it's a pilgrimage. It's definitely a change from start to finish. If you don't like being alone, then you wouldn't like that trip, because you're very much alone out there for long periods of time. You have to like yourself to do a trip like that, I think.
Yeah.
You have to be able to lie in the middle of a Maine woods, thinking that there may be no human being within 50 miles of you, and it's only you and the animals in a really deep, dark forest at night. You have to like that.
If you're uncomfortable in your own skin, that's not going to be too good.
That's the case, I think, yeah.
So there's a large degree of self-acceptance in doing these
I think
kinds of
so. I
things?
think that's a very good way to put it, yeah. Self-acceptance.
Do you think that people have that to begin with, or that's something that develops during these kinds of...
I think a lot of people who don't have it to start with are the ones maybe who do not finish the trail. The ones who learn to accept their own skin are the ones who maybe have a better chance of finishing, because they've come to terms with what is. There's a difference in hiking, walking Indiana from south to north. I don't want to say that it's not good, but the people down south were a little more reticent than the people. It seems like as I got more north, the people were more open. I don't know if it's just my personality reflecting that, but I had a hard time getting to know the people down south in the southern part of the state, although I must say that walking the back roads of Indiana really got me to know the state a lot better, and I appreciate that, because it's always good to know your home area better, and it's a wonderful place, Indiana is, I think.
Yeah, some people think it's pretty backward. There's nothing but corn in Indiana. It's like anywhere else.
Oh, I tell you, we have a very diverse state from north to south.
Yeah.
It's such a long way down, about 320 miles from border to border, and you reach a real diversity during that length of time, during that length of area.
Did you meet press people on the way?
I did not meet press people along the way, with the exception of Plymouth last weekend, when Bill Stant's Citizens for Stant committee set up a press conference down there, a news conference. We met at the Plymouth Pilot News with a reporter, and they took photographs, and then later we went over to the Plymouth office of the South Bend Tribune, and they did an interview and took photos, and both papers, the next day the Tribune printed a good article about us, and a better one in the Plymouth edition of the South Bend Tribune, and on Monday the Plymouth Pilot News did a nice story. Other than that, there wasn't anything. I think my walk was less coordinated than it could have been, but that's solely from an experience standpoint. If we did it again, we'd know more what to do next time, and we're using a lot of inexperienced people here to do a very tough job. That's all it is. Well, it requires a third party like us to get 30,000 signatures at least to get on the ballot in Indiana, and to actually get 30,000 verified signatures means we might have to get 40 to 45,000 because so many are kicked out for one reason or another, not having the right address or not putting down the right information, or just because one county clerk is a little more picky than another county clerk. And I think we have 12,000 to date, but the momentum is building. We have more people out there today collecting signatures than we had last weekend, and next weekend we'll have a lot more than we have today. If we get ballot access this year, Bill Stanton will be on the ballot as Secretary of State in Indiana. If he garners at least 2% of the vote for Secretary of State this November, then the Green Party will have ballot access in 2008, which means anywhere across the state, anyone who wants to pay the fee can file for any office as a Green. That's not to say that we'll be endorsed by the Green Party, but that's another matter. Well, I think actually the Democrats and Republicans do have a clue as to how difficult it is. They're the ones who made it difficult.
Indiana quadrupled the number of signatures needed to get on the ballot in 1980. Currently, Indiana requires more signatures to get on the statewide ballot than any state except California, North Carolina, Georgia, Texas, and Oklahoma. In Georgia and Oklahoma, bills are pending to lower the requirements.
We're the 5th hardest state in the country to get on the ballot. I think Louisiana requires something like 1,000 signatures or whatever. Texas is hard, and other places are, and four other places are harder. But there's no reason to make it difficult for a third party to be represented in a state like Indiana.
On May 11, 2001, Indiana Governor Frank O'Bannon, Democrat, signed SB 329, which moves the independent and minor party petition candidate deadlines from July 15 to June 30. Indiana appears to be the only state which has made ballot access more difficult in 2001. Indiana already has one of the most restricted ballot access laws. It was one of only 7 states in which Ralph Nader failed to qualify last year. The deadline change deprives activists of the opportunity to get signatures over the July 4 holiday, when it's easy to find large crowds in public spaces. Indiana activists lobbied against this bill to no avail. The new deadline is probably unconstitutional for presidential petitions.
Bill Stanton says 7,000 maybe. I think 5,000 signatures is plenty for a political party to make itself serious enough to run on the ballot in Indiana. It's only because, well, I say this, and a lot of Greens say this, that the Republicans and Democrats have controlled the legislature, and they have passed the laws that make it difficult for third parties to run, and they don't want the competition. I think competition is good. I think people are ready for competition in this state.
On May 12, 2005, the governor of Indiana signed SB 467, which ends a subsidy to political parties that polled more than 10% of the vote in the last Secretary of State's election. The subsidy consisted of most of the state revenues from the sale of personalized auto license plates. The Libertarian Party had sued against this subsidy back in 1984, but the courts had upheld it. However, it is now gone.
No matter what happens, we're stronger this year than we were last year, and next year we'll be stronger than we are this year, regardless of anything else. So it's a tough battle, but exponentially we're gaining momentum every day, like I said.